doing the top stories, talking them through, thinking about them, but crucially, unlike so many of the other shows, and there are lots on television and radio on Sunday mornings at about this time, where we see journalists talking about politicians, we see politicians talking about politicians, we even see journalists talking about journalists. And this is the one Sunday show where the public, you, get the chance to have your say. Now, it's Sunday, so perhaps it's appropriate that in an online article for the Sunday Times, the self-proclaimed Messiah himself, Tony Blair, is busy telling us that we ought to come to a new arrangement in terms of immigration with the European Union by checking people in and checking people out, and says that basically Brexit has to be reversed and we need a second referendum. And I'm asking you, in the light of his comments, is it realistic now to call for a second referendum, or have we passed that point? Now, I've got a little bit of form and history with Mr. Blair, because back in 2005, after his third historic election win, he took on the rotating presidency of the European Union. He was the president of it for 6 months. And right at the end of the process, on December the 22nd, 2005, after 6 months of negotiations in which he promised he'd change the whole of the EU and he would renegotiate the common agricultural policy to Britain's benefit, after all-night negotiations, he came into a room full of MEPs to explain how he'd got no renegotiation of the common agricultural policy whatsoever, but had agreed to give away £7 billion of the British rebate. And I said to him, I said it surely wasn't acceptable that yet more money was going from our country to pay for new infrastructure in Central and Eastern Europe, and that actually we were very unhappy with the deal that he'd done by giving us open borders to countries much poorer than us. This is how Tony Blair responded to me that morning.
You sit with our country's flag. You do not represent our country's interests. This is the year 2005. This is the year 2005, not 1945. We're not fighting each other anymore. These are our partners, they're our colleagues, and our future lies in Europe.
Well, for even daring to challenge the Blair agenda, for daring to challenge open borders, for predicting that it would lead to a huge rush of people to the United Kingdom, all the while he was holding on to the fantasy that it would only lead to another 13,000 people every year. For all of that, yes, Mr. Blair had his go at me that morning, as did virtually everybody in the European Parliament and most people in the British press too. And I did make a series of big predictions on that morning as to what would happen if mass numbers came to Britain. Well, now, Mr. Blair, it's 2017. And here's what you're saying this morning.
This decision is life-changing for this country. And this is a moment when every member of Parliament, including the people like Michael Fallon, who frankly believe that Britain's better off in Europe and not out of it, have got to see if there is a way of meeting people's legitimate grievances and anxieties that gave rise to that Brexit vote, but do it in a way that doesn't undermine the economy of the society and the country and its standing in the world. So what I'm trying to do with this immigration paper that my institute's published today is have a comprehensive look at European immigration, say there are ways of controlling European immigration that don't mean you have to do Brexit. And then, by the way, you can concentrate on non-EU immigration, which I think is actually a bigger concern for most people.
So, it's 2017, Mr. Blair, and you've written in the Sunday Times that open-door immigration leads to people's wages becoming lower, leads to people struggling to get access to public services. Oh, and also, Mr. Blair, apparently it leads to problems of integration in Britain's towns and cities. And you've done all of this by saying that no longer are the policies I had as Prime Minister appropriate? No apology, no admission of how wrong you were, no concept of what you've done to towns and cities all over this country, not just by opening up the doors to 8 and then 10 former communist countries, but by deliberately encouraging mass immigration from the non-EU world as well. Remember, your advisor said you wanted to rub the noses of the right in diversity. Well, you did a jolly good job, and you alienated millions and millions of people. And for you now to come out and in this hypocritical way talk about us controlling immigration, frankly, I think the whole thing is completely beyond the pale. Certainly got me worked up this Sunday morning. Well, that's Blair. But what about the question? Because what he's trying to do, and the reason that Bob Geldof was in central London yesterday with, I don't know whether it was 25,000 or 50,000 people. Reports vary. Not sure it really matters. But the fact is, there was a big rally yesterday, the People's March for Europe, unite, rethink and reject Brexit, and the push is on for a second referendum. And again, Tony Blair was asked this morning what he saw as the alternative.
If you believe there is a better way through, and I'm trying to suggest, and we'll publish more papers over the next months, there are better ways of dealing with the country's problems than Brexit, then at least try and explain that to the country. Find the leadership within yourself to say to people, there is a different and better way. Now, if the country doesn't change its mind, I've always accepted. If there isn't a change, then Brexit will go forward. What I'm saying to those in positions of political leadership and those members of Parliament at the moment is, guys, this is not an ordinary decision. So make this make this one where you're prepared to go out, and if you think that there is a different and better way, put it before people and argue for it.
So it's all about pushing for a second referendum. And I'm just asking you the question. I want to hear what you, the public, think. Is it realistic now to push for a second referendum, or has it gone? Is it time to accept it and move on? And you can call me on 0345 60 60 973. You can text to 84850. You can tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage and LBC. And of course, if you're following on Facebook Live, you can Facebook message as well. Now, I'm going to go first to John McTernan, a former senior policy advisor to Tony Blair, and a director of political operations during that particular period in 2005 that I'm talking about. John, good morning to you.
Good morning, Nigel.
Is this, John, please, I really want to know, because Mr. Blair hasn't really quite spelt it out in the Sunday Times article. I mean, Is this an apology for getting it wrong back then or not?
No, it's not an apology for getting it wrong, because we didn't get it wrong. It's an attempt to derail Brexit, which is why I think it's an interesting and clever intervention.
Well, John, I think if you were trying to derail Brexit, you would have more chance of doing so if people thought that your previous policy had been a success. But do you accept that, even among many Labour voters in parts of this country, there is a feeling that we simply let too many people in?
Yeah, I disagree with that that view profoundly. I think the policy of letting people in worked in both dimensions. One, we needed workers to work in Britain. We were going through an economic job-creating miracle, and if people hadn't come to work here, things would just not have been done in the health service, in agriculture, and financial services. The second, most important thing you said, these were former communist countries. Yeah. Look at the situation of Romania or Bulgaria compared to the situation of Ukraine. The former communist countries which came into Europe and which were granted freedom of movement are actually democracies, and Ukraine is a broken country, broken by Putin and broken by the influence of the Russian Federation. So what we did was geopolitically right. What we did was right for Europe. What we did was right for Britain.
Okay, so you take the view that this actually benefited Romania and Bulgaria, and you take the view that it benefited us too. And no, listen. I mean, I'm not here to fight you. I'm here to listen to the arguments.
I'm just here. I'm here just to say what I think. Well,
no, absolutely. But with Mr. Blair making, I mean, let's face it. This is a big intervention. I mean, it's
major.
It's a big article. Interesting that it's online on the Sunday Times, which tells us a bit, I think, about the newspaper industry, where we're going, and a big TV interview. I mean, do you honestly think that what Tony Blair is trying to do is not just to get us to rethink Brexit? And let's face it, John, 70% of the public now actually want us to get on with Brexit. I mean, it's not very likely to work, is it?
So I think what Tony is trying to do is he's casting around for a way to reframe the question of EU membership, because there are some problems which the government are finding difficulty with. For example, resolving the border between Northern Ireland and Ireland is proving pretty intractable. So Tony's approach is clearly this. There was a battle in the referendum debate about the costs and the benefits of migration, and in a sense, a battle between a view about the social costs of migration and the economic benefits of migration. And that if you can find a way to say the European Union doesn't need to create the problems that you believe it creates, because there are ways of, if we had a Belgian or Dutch system of registration of workers when they come to Britain, citizens when they come from other European nations, if we do these things, does that resolve the issues that you had, or what is it a bigger, more profound one? Because I think he's right.
Okay.
People are seeing the government struggling with Brexit, but in the absence of any alternative propositions, people go, as you said, let's just get on with it and do it because that was the will of the people, that was the democratic decision, and you cannot overturn democratic votes willy-nilly. There's got to be a groundswell of opinion. So he's attempting to intervene politically to see whether he can strike a chord. And we'll see.
And that makes sense. I don't think it'll work, but maybe it will.
Yeah.
But does this really mean that, let's suppose that Blair's intervention did suddenly get a bow wave of support?
Yeah.
That a lot of Brexiteers said, you know what, if actually we were able to get these concessions, maybe we could stay in. I'm not saying they will, but just supposing they did. Would that mean that Tony Blair comes back to active British politics and leads a new centre party?
That last bit, he wouldn't lead a party.
Right.
He's not going to come back to lead the Labour Party. He's not going to come back to lead a new centre party. What he is that, as you know, our conversation reveals, Tony Blair really has never left British politics. What he says is important. What he says generates headlines. What he says gets coverage and gets controversy. And so the only sense in which he's been absent from British politics is that he stood back and let Gordon Brown and then Ed Miliband and Jeremy Corbyn run the Labour Party the way that they want. And he sees the Brexit issue as you do, as a major choice
of
the country. And that, therefore, if you have a view, you never, even in the darkest time when you thought you weren't gaining ground, you argued your case and you argued your point. I think that's the same with Tony. He's trying to argue his point and find a way to find a connection.
Well,
it's
John,
what all politicians do.
John, I have to say that you've argued this case today, and we've done it between us with great civility, so thank you very much indeed for coming on the show. I really do appreciate it. Well, that was John McTernan, former senior policy advisor and former director of political operations for Tony Blair during those crucial times, and he's very clear that the policy in 2004 of opening up the doors to the former communist countries, he makes clear it was not a mistake and there is no apology needed whatsoever. Right now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's 10:18.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Death and destruction brought across much of the Caribbean and headed for Cuba and for Florida in the wake of Hurricane Irma.
Brian Hoskins chairs the Grantham Institute for Climate Change at the Imperial College London.
The warming of the planet is not just a warming and everything goes on just the same. And of course the governments of the world have paid attention. In Paris, the US says it's going to pull out of that, but I think Donald Trump is becoming an irrelevancy in this because the climate system isn't waiting for him to change his mind.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Hampton by Hilton. Book direct for the lowest price.
Every weekday morning from 7, only on LBC. If you own a Swiss watch and it's time to sell it, speak to watches.co.uk. The whole process runs like clockwork. Rolex, Patek Philippe, Omega and more. It only takes a couple of ticks, and we pay immediately. Or if you just fancy a change, we could take yours in part exchange. From time on your hands to money in your pocket, it couldn't be easier with watches.co.uk. The pre-owned Swiss watch specialist.
Happy Happiness starts with a smile.
As one of the UK's leading dental travel clinics, Vital Europe have offered cost-effective dental solutions to over 30,000 patients for the last 10 years. After an initial consultation, our clinics in London and Budapest use dental implants to give you a smile in just 1 day before a further final treatment. With finance packages and a treatment guarantee, take a positive step to a healthier-looking smile with vitaleurope.co.uk.
Sometimes it can be hard to keep your show on the road, but new Car Genie from the AA makes things easier. Car Genie helps predict and prevent breakdowns. Just plug it into your car and it will warn you and us if there's a potential problem. That should keep you rolling. New Car Genie from the AA, because anything can happen. Compatible vehicles only. Check the AA.com for details.
Want to beat the holiday blues? KLM is back with fantastic dream deals to colour your world. Fly from London via Amsterdam and swap grey skies with golden dunes in Abu Dhabi, turquoise waters in Mauritius, or colourful vibes in San Francisco. Leave the blues behind and book at KLM.com. KLM's dream deals end on Tuesday the 12th of September.
Why on earth would WeBuyAnyCar.com want to tell the nation that they might get more money for their cars by selling privately? Are they stark raving mad? No, they're just being honest. Yes, you might get a better price selling privately, but you have to give up your precious time to do it. So if you value your time more than a few extra quid, enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Admin fee may apply. For more information, see WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
It's time to celebrate. The BT Mobile free data giveaway is here, with up to 6 gig of free extra data on a range of SIMs and smartphones. So there's a plan out there for everyone. Our free data giveaway. It's only on until the 21st of September, so search BT Mobile today. Be there. BT.
Restrictions apply. See details. Excludes businesses. New BT Mobile customers only. Subject to credit status. Terms apply.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
So we've heard from Tony Blair, and he says there's a new way that we can control immigration from people coming from the European Union by counting them in and counting them out and not allowing them benefits unless they're paying into the system. And he even highlights that too much immigration can lead to dislocation within communities, a lack of integration, downward pressure on wages, and John McTernan, one of his former senior policy advisors, saying, look, we don't regret anything we did back then, but the situation is different now. And the reason for making this argument, John McTernan was clear, is we want to change public opinion. We want to push for people to have a rethink and have a second referendum. And I'm asking you, is that realistic, or has that ship simply sailed? And unlike all the other Sunday shows, where there's endless talk between journalists and politicians, this is now your turn. And I'm going to ask John in Formby. John, you've listened to Mr. Blair. Is it realistic to push now for a second referendum, or has he missed something?
Yeah, I think he's missed the boat. I think he's in the last chance saloon, and the chairs are going on the table pretty soon.
Right.
there's two...
it's a bit early on a Sunday for that sort of analogy, John, really, but okay.
No, not in my house.
Right. Right, so that ship has sailed, yeah?
Or they're loosening the mooring rope, shall we say. Two things occur to me. One, this is part of the Rehabilitate Blair campaign, because I think he feels he can come back as some sort of King Arthur in the nation's dire peril. And also it's part of what's becoming almost like a Star Wars trilogy. That Nigel Skywalker won the first round, but now we're into the second battle. The establishment strikes back. And of course we've got the usual suspects, our friend Lord Blair of Baghdad, as I call him, and his old mucker Rudolph Hesseltine, and they will not give up this fight. But whether they can carry anyone with them remains to be seen, and I frankly doubt it. I also think on this immigration thing that it shows how false and hollow Blair is, because he made a complete mess of it, and he won't apologise.
No, that's right. This is the bit, John, that I don't understand. You know, I try to make that point to John McTernan, that if he did apologise and said, look, we did make mistakes, and because of that, you know, we need a different policy, I think it then might be credible. But to say, no, everything was wonderful until today. Just today, we need to change a policy. I don't think it's credible, John, and it's just a desperate attempt to try and get us to change our minds on Brexit. John from Formby, thank you very much indeed. And there is some support, though, coming in for Blair. I'd be happy for a second referendum. The question on the ballot paper should be, do we accept the negotiated deal or leave the EU with no deal and operate under WTO rules? Patrick from East Sheen suggesting something like that could be put in a second referendum. Have to say, Patrick, it's a very complicated question, and I think referendums need to have a very simple question. Blair is history. He should follow Mr Cameron's example and say nothing about Brexit. We do not need another referendum. Nigel, you are in touch with public opinion. Well, thank you. Sheila, too late. Blair now regrets his lack of control in the EU negotiations. We finally woke up as a nation with last year's referendum. Fully out is the only way, whatever the disruption. I wonder what Tony in Fareham thinks. Tony, is it realistic to think that these people can push and succeed and get a second referendum?
Yes, good morning to you, Nigel.
Good morning.
I'm waking up every day to some new controversial comment by Tony Blair, and I think the whole public are getting sick of it. I think, anybody with half a brain or any ounce of sense would look to see what's happening in the poorer nations of the EU and how they're being bullied, especially countries like Hungary.
Yes.
They are paying the price. They're being bullied by the EU to take so many people. They haven't got the infrastructure to deal with it. And I don't understand, what the British people cannot see, that how these politicians in Europe are, or the unelected politicians, I hasten to add, are behaving towards the poorer members of the EU.
Well, you're talking about the Greeks, of course, and
Greeks, yeah. I
mean, they've suffered. In fact, you could actually argue, Tony, that a lot of the Mediterranean has been through an absolutely miserable 15 years as a result of joining a currency that they were never suited to.
Well, yes, and Hungary, I understand, are putting up a wall with Serbia because they're so terrified, they're so worried about the influx of it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, Tony, it's not just Hungary. You've actually got Hungary, Poland, the Czech Republic, where I'm going to be next week, and Slovakia. Those four countries are saying, enough. We're not going to accept large numbers of migrants being sent to us because Mr Juncker and Mrs Merkel opened the door. So you've actually, Tony, got two problems in the EU. You've got the north-south split on economics and the east-west split in Europe culturally and in terms of how we deal with the migrant crisis. So I think for Blair, this makes it quite hard, because if the European Union was seen to be unified and successful, he might have a bit more of a chance to tempt us to go back in. But as it is, Tony, I think he'll fail with this. Do you?
Yes, I do, and I think the EU is on borrowed time, to be perfectly honest with you. I think the Juncker and the rest of them are just hanging on to their by their fingernails, really, to their very lucrative jobs.
Oh.
And
Tony, it's a great lifestyle in Brussels. I know. I've been there for 18 years, and, kind of what's not to like, I suppose. Tony, thank you for your call. Matthew in Heathrow, you agree with Tony Blair, I understand?
Oh, yes, Nigel. I'm not a Labour supporter, but I agree with Tony Blair. We've got to reform these immigration rules.
Yes.
But basically, we need a transition arrangement, and that's the only way we're going to leave Europe, but we're going to still have the rules they want us to abide by, basically keeping the free movement. But we're going to control that as we can already now. So all we've got to do is just make sure when people arrive, they arrive with their passports, we give them an entry stamp, and then we do exit checks. And we make sure when they're in the UK, they pay their taxes when they're working. And that's how we're going to control it. And then we will get that free trade movement. It's going to take a long time to leave Europe to get all the laws in place, and that's why we need at least a 5-year transition arrangement.
I mean, one worry I have, Matthew, about that, and by the way, I don't blame the EU for everything, is that Theresa May, as Home Secretary, for all those years, had the job of reforming non-EU immigration and cutting the numbers, and she failed, didn't she?
Well, I mean, they had the opportunity there, and I think, it should be cross-party. Everyone's got to work together, and I think that's why it's good. Labour's speaking up to make sure we get the right deal with Europe, and I think it doesn't matter who's in power. I mean, everyone's going to do what's right for the UK. And
well, I hope they will, Matthew. I sincerely hope they will. Just quickly, Matthew, you've made your point that we ought to be handling immigration better regardless. Do you think that Mr. Blair, by pushing this agenda, do you think it's realistic that this could lead to a second referendum on EU membership?
No, I was a Remainer, but I've accepted we're going to leave. But basically, I don't think we need the second referendum, but we've got to make sure we get the deal right.
Yes.
And the only way we're going to do it is by having this transition arrangement.
Lovely.
Everyone...
Matthew, thank you. Thank you, Matthew. And that's your problem, Mr. Blair. There are lots of Matthew from Heathrow's out there. People who voted Remain, but now accept we're leaving and want us to make the best job of it. We're going to get the up-to-date news on Hurricane Irma directly from Florida in a moment. But for now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage edition of The Sunday Show. It's 10:30 and time for the news with Philip Chrysikos.
Hurricane Irma is now about 40 miles off the southeast of Florida, ready to make landfall as a strengthened Category 4 hurricane. The US state's governor is telling residents to charge their phones while they have power and to make sure emergency alert settings are enabled. Tony Blair is calling for tougher immigration to take back control of Britain's borders to avoid the UK leaving the European Union. The former Labour Prime Minister, who's a supporter of the EU, now admits his open border policy from when he was in power is no longer appropriate. The National Child Sex Abuse Inquiry is going to consider historical reports surrounding former Prime Minister Sir Edward Heath. Wiltshire Police began their operation in 2015 when the leader of the Conservatives from 1970 to 1974 was identified as a suspect. LBC weather: sunshine in the east, cloudy and wet across the west. That rain spreading to all parts of the UK by this afternoon. Feeling chilly, a high of 19 degrees.
LBC travel in London. The A406 North Circular Road in Hendon is closed all day in both directions at the Staples Corner flyover because of works. Long queues are starting to form westbound from the Brent Cross flyover and eastbound from the Neasden interchange. Also in London, the A4 Piccadilly underpass is closed in both directions at Hyde Park Corner because of maintenance works. In Clerkenwell, the traffic lights aren't working on Old Street at the Goswell Road junction. In Barons Court, the A4 Talgarth Road westbound has a lane blocked at Glidden Road because of an accident. The M4 eastbound towards London is moving slowly from Junction 3 for Hayes and Junction 2 for Brentford. In Bedfordshire, the A5 Dunstable Northern Bypass is closed both ways between Watling Street and the M1 because of an accident. On the rails, there's no service on Great Western Railway at Paddington because of late finishing engineering works. And on the tube, the Circle Line is completely closed today because of engineering works at Baker Street and Edgware Road. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC. New Sky Sports is here. So now all our Sky TV customers can get our brand new channel dedicated to the Premier League for £18 a month. With 126 live games and a new weeknight debate show. Exciting, eh, Gary? If you don't have Sky TV, bundles start from £22 a month. Search New Sky Sports today to get our new Premier League channel.
Unbelievable!
Cancellation requires 31 days notice. New Sky TV customers, £20 setup fee, 18-month contract.
Admiral, welcome to the show.
My pleasure.
Now, there's been a lot of talk recently about your multi-cover discounts for home and car insurance.
You mean our guaranteed multi-cover discounts?
Yes. Another insurance company saving us money?
Andrew, that's not us. We're different. We cover your home and car insurance on one policy, guaranteeing you a lower Admiral price.
Well, you say that.
Please, go to admiral.com and see the multi-cover discounts for yourself.
High-quality kitchen you've dreamed of at a price well within your budget. That's Room Sense.
That's Room Sense.
This month, all kitchens are half price with a free oven hob and extractor. Book your free home design visit today at roomsense.co.uk.
Quality at a price you can afford. That's Room Sense.
Offer ends soon. Minimum spend applies.
People who've had their dental implants at TDC implant centres have had their lives transformed.
Anthony gave me a mirror when they were actually in situ and said, smile. And I did, and it was just amazing.
We gave Sylvana a full set of implants and beautiful fixed teeth in just one day. Around 3 months later, we exchanged her fixed teeth for her final permanent set.
I said, Mr. Zubitz, I do believe that you've made me look younger.
Book your free consultation today. Visit smileinaday.co.uk.
Travel Pack. Have the right flight at the right price. In fact, we'll price match most worldwide flights if you find one cheaper elsewhere at the time of booking. So, if you need to book a flight, remember the Travel Pack price match. Call Travel Pack on 0208 903 9999. You won't find a better price for your flight. Travel Pack 0208 903 9999. ATOL protected. Excludes low-cost operators. Competitors must be ATOL licensed. Conditions apply.
The world's best low-cost long-haul airline just got better. Fly Norwegian to America from as little as £130. Start your holiday on board our Boeing 787 Dreamliner with hours of blockbuster entertainment flying non-stop from London Gatwick. Book now at norwegian.com. Fares are one-way including taxes, subject to availability. Book by 18th September, travel from 16th October to 16th March 2018, excluding weekends, school and public holidays. Baggage fees may apply. Visit norwegian.com for full details.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Well, Tony Blair is trying to change the direction of British politics. He says we can control immigration far better under EU rules and maybe then head towards a second referendum and reverse what he sees as a huge historic mistake. But meanwhile, the story that is absolutely dominating global news is, of course, Hurricane Irma. Now, it's wreaked havoc in many of the Caribbean islands. We understand it's now strengthened to a Category 4 storm, which means sustained winds of 130 miles per hour, not just gusts, and gusts very much higher than that. Now, Florida has been bracing itself for this, and amidst pretty dire warnings from the Florida governor, Rick Scott, saying to people, just get out, because if the storm surge is 10 or 15 feet. Scott has been saying, look, you can rebuild houses, you can, get new possessions, but your life literally is in danger. And we understand that 6.5 million people have now fled the coastline. Well, somebody that hasn't fled the coastline is Erica Rodriguez, and she's a reporter and anchor for WIOD, a radio broadcaster in Miami. And Erica, I understand you're still in Miami.
We're actually a little bit north of the city.
Yeah.
In Broward County. We are inland. That's the good news. We are not going to have to deal with storm surge, but we've been dealing with severe tornadoes. In fact, our entire organization, iHeartRadio, was forced to go downstairs into what we're considering our safe room because we had a tornado in the area. In fact, in South Florida, there have been 10 tornado warnings since last night.
Oh, right. So it's not just strong winds, it's tornadoes. And this storm surge that Rick Scott, your governor, was talking about. I mean, if that happens, are these areas now evacuated completely, or have people just said, the hell with it, we're going to stay?
You have your very who, no matter what, it's for so many people in the emergency response situations. Those are their jobs, and they're not responding to calls right now because the winds are strong. And then, of course, if you have part of the ocean starting to show up onto the street, that's another problem because they're going to have major flooding issues, and the businesses will start to fill with water like what we saw with Hurricane Harvey.
And when, Erica, is this storm expected to be at its worst?
Well, the Key West is in front of the storm. We have the National Weather Service, Key West, saying that they expect the eye wall, which is going to be the strongest winds, heaviest rain, starting to move through in about an hour and a half or so.
In an hour and a half or so, right. Erica, listen, thank you so much for coming on and bringing us up to speed, and we wish you well, and our thoughts are with everybody in Florida right at this moment in time. Erica, thank you. Well, Erica, they're making it clear that she's on high ground, but in an hour and a half's time, so around about midday our time, it's expected to be at its very worst. I guess it's very difficult for forecasters to know quite what to do and what to say, but clearly Rick Scott, the governor, and indeed President Trump as well, taking absolutely no chances on this whatsoever. So I'm asking, in the wake of what Tony Blair has said this morning, is it realistic for him to push for a second referendum? And I'm going to go to Adam in delightful Carrickfergus in Northern Ireland. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice to talk to you again.
Good.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, Nigel, I at the time of the Irish getting a second vote, I didn't really pay much attention to it, but it seems to be kind of like history repeating itself with that, because you have now almost a daily onslaught of negativity towards this Brexit, and it just worries me that it's not going to happen, Nigel. I really do think that the powers that be are gonna betray the 52%, to be honest with you.
Well, Adam, we are dealing with very strong and powerful forces. We're dealing with big banks, big multinational businesses, big politics, and generally big media too. And you're quite right to talk about Ireland. Way back in 1992, the Danes rejected, and in fact under the rules vetoed, the Treaty of Maastricht. And that should have been that, according to the European rules. But oh no, that wasn't good enough. They were forced to vote and bullied a second time into voting yes. And it's happened in the Republic twice since the year 2000, where the Irish have voted no to European treaties and been forced to vote again. I remember after the Irish rejected the Lisbon Treaty, asking Mr Barroso in the European Parliament, what part of the word no don't you understand? And they think, Adam, these big powerful forces that you're right to identify, they think they can bully us into submission as they managed in previous times with the Danes and with the Irish, and I contend that simply isn't going to happen. So Adam, I'm less pessimistic than you, but I thank you for your call. And Adam's point of view, I have to say, I've met quite a lot of Leavers who are really, really worried that we're going to be betrayed. That's how they feel. Now, joining me next is somebody who I have clashed with, I think it's fair to say, Alistair Campbell, former Director of Communications for Tony Blair. Alistair, good morning.
Hi, Angela.
I'm very well indeed, thank you. Now, the point of this show, Alistair, I promise you, is it's not a duel. I would really want to find out what my guests think. Do you welcome this intervention by Tony Blair today?
I do, and I'm on the way up to see Burnley beat Crystal Palace, and I've been channel hopping between other radio stations, and I can't remember if it was on your programme or somewhere else where I heard somebody say that whatever you think of Tony Blair, and I know he divides opinion in the same way as perhaps you and I do sometimes.
Sure.
But the fact is that he's a 3 times elected Prime Minister. He's got massive experience, and I don't think you can just dismiss him either because people know what he did in Iraq, or because you put him in with what you just defined as these big, powerful forces trying to stop this. I think an awful lot of people, and I count myself among them, are genuinely worried that the negotiations are going, that we are doing fundamental damage to Britain's economy, to Britain as a country, to our standing in the world. And I think what Tony's trying to do is actually to say, look, the reasons why people did for Brexit, of course they have to be addressed, they have to be taken into account, but also making the point that if we as a country decide that the deal that we're going to get is going to do fundamental damage to us, then let's try and find a way of getting through this process without all of that damage. Now, what is wrong with that?
Well, Alistair, look, but by the way, I have not mentioned Iraq once on this show because I didn't want to really try and slant the debate. I wanted it to be as fair as I possibly could be. But Alistair, here's the problem I've got with this. Okay, it's all well and good Tony Blair saying, look, let's change the rules on EU immigration because, the policy that we had is no longer appropriate. My problem, Alistair, is there's no admission from Blair or from John McTernan, who I just spoke to. So I'm going to ask you, did you get it wrong in 2004 by opening up the doors to 8 and then 10 poor former communist countries?
We certainly underestimated the impact that would have. There's no doubt about that. But I also agree, you've got to remember, Nigel, at that time, the way that the Europe was developing, the geopolitics with these former communist countries, but did the economy need much of the migration was happening?
I'm struggling a bit, Alistair, with your line. I know you're on the move and you've pulled over because you're going up to watch Burnley lose to Crystal Palace. I reversed that. Alistair, can you still hear me? He's gone. Never mind. Phil in Ashtead, you've heard what Alistair Campbell said. You've heard what John McTernan said. You've heard what Tony Blair's said. Is it realistic that we're going to have a second referendum, Phil?
Well, for me, it's absolutely essential, Nigel. I mean, for me, Brexit is an act of national suicide in many respects. And let me tell you what.
So, Phil, hang on. So taking back our democratic rights of self-government is a disastrous thing to do, is it?
In the current world situation, yes. And I'll tell you why. Nigel, you're always bleating on about the Anglo-Saxon, English-speaking dominance of world trade, politics for the last 300 years. And you're absolutely right. We have done. But that is going to massively change over the next 50 to 100 years. Now, look, I'm going to give you a hypothetical situation that's very likely. Would you agree that China is knocking on the door of America as the largest economy in the world and will, without doubt, but, you know, they're going to have teething troubles as they are having, as any developing nation does, but they will exceed America by a long, long measure in 50 to 100 years, barring no nuclear war wiping the whole world out.
So?
Okay, so, now, as I said, now imagine yourself as a Chinese businessman 50 years from hence. You are now a businessman in the most powerful economy of the world by a long measure. It's no longer a case of the tail wagging the dog. Now, you've got the biggest airline in the world by a long stretch. There are 3.5 times more Mandarin speakers than there are the whole of English mother tongue speakers in the world. I am so sad.
Yeah, Phil, I don't disagree. I don't disagree that China's going to become huge for one moment, or that there is a massive transference of power in the world going on economically and politically from east to west. I don't disagree with any of that, Phil, but I don't see why a nation of our size can't cope with it. Now, Alistair Campbell, can you hear me, Alistair?
Yes, I can.
Good, thank you for coming back. I just want to ask you one last question. You know, I know that you're very committed to a second referendum, and we talked about it, and clearly Tony Blair is. Given that all the recent polling, you know, 5 or 6 polls showing that now 68 to 70% of the country say, look, however we voted last year, it's time to simply get on with Brexit. Do you actually think that this campaign that you're fighting and what we saw happening with Bob Geldof and the People's March for Europe yesterday, do you actually think it's realistic that you could get a second referendum on EU membership?
John McTernan made the point to you, Nigel, that when you were losing lots of elections, losing lots of arguments, you don't give up. If you feel, as I do, that Britain is on the verge of doing something fundamentally damaging to its own interests, you have to. Now, if we rerun the debate last referendum, saying let's have that same question again, no, but we're now in a completely different set of circumstances. This would be giving the country the choice, whether that's in Parliament, whether it's a referendum of people, to say, are you entitled as a country to take a look at what we're doing? Is not what we thought we were doing. And I just, the split hands keep saying, we did vote to leave the European Union, we did not vote to make ourselves poorer, but we are going to do that. And what I find extraordinary, Nigel, with I mean, to be fair, your opinion has been consistent throughout, but now, they're no longer even saying this is going to be good for you, this is going to be good for Britain. They're simply saying we've had the vote, therefore we've got to make it happen. Whatever the cost. And I'm simply saying that is a mad situation to be in, where you say whatever the cost to the country, we are going to do this. I'm saying if the cost turns out to be too high, if it is possible to address the concerns that people have, as Tony Blair is doing today, and at the same time retain the full benefits of the European Union, which have been considerable, then I think we should at least...
OK, Alistair, you believe in it strongly, and we will talk about it again. Thank you for coming on the phone, and enjoy the football. You're listening to the brand new Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's 10:48.
This is LBC.
Sometimes it can be hard to keep your show on the road, but new Car Genie from the AA makes things easier. Car Genie helps predict and prevent breakdowns. Just plug it into your car and it will warn you and us if there's a potential problem. That should keep you rolling. New Car Genie from the AA. Because anything can happen. Compatible vehicles only. Check the AA.com for details.
The Alaris Kitchen and Bathroom Summer Sale is now on. There's big savings on quality kitchens by Pronorm and Mearway, Siemens appliances and fitted bathrooms. Take advantage of our unique lifestyle kitchen designs and improve your home for less. Discover the stunning Alaris showrooms at Crossways, Dartford, or visit alariskitchens.co.uk.
Transform your home with Alaris.
Hey, Sarah, did you see our street in the Admiral ad last night? Yeah, with the inspiration for multi-cover. Guaranteed discounts on Admiral home and car insurance, don't you know?
Your home and car on one policy.
But seriously, it's a lifesaver. I know. I did my car, Rob's car and the house, and it was multi-cover discounts all round. Ooh, that deserves a celebration. Cup of tea, something stronger.
Multi-cover your home and cars at admiral.com.
Every week, thousands of people sell with WeBuyAnyCar.com. Whether it's a Fiesta or a Ferrari, a Mini or a Merc, a Beamer or something else beginning with B, a big bright blue Bentley. WeBuyAnyCar.com makes selling any car simple, fast and hassle-free. Probably why it's called WeBuyAnyCar.com. Change the way you sell your car. Enter your reg number now at WeBuyAnyCar.com. Terms and conditions apply. See WeBuyAnyCar.com/info.
New Sky Sports is here. So now all our Sky TV customers can get our brand new channel dedicated to the Premier League for £18 a month. With 126 live games and a new weeknight debate show. Exciting, eh, Gary? If you don't have Sky TV, bundles start from £22 a month. Search New Sky Sports today to get our new Premier League channel.
Unbelievable!
Cancellation requires 31 days notice. New Sky TV customers, £20 setup fee, 18-month contract.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
We've had Alistair Campbell on the show, we've had John McTurnan on the show. Nobody could say we're not giving everybody their chance to have their say. Alistair Campbell believes it's going to be a disaster if Britain leaves the EU and that anything must be done to try and give the people a second referendum on the issue. And Tony Blair is trying to do that today and trying to build up support for it today by saying we can actually stay in the EU and deal with immigration differently. My problem with all of that is all of them do not and will not apologise for what happened back in 2004 when they opened the door. But there we are. They say circumstances then were very different. Now, it's not just me being critical, because Sir Michael Fallon, the Defence Secretary, has been on the Andrew Marr show this morning, and Sir Michael says, I think it's a pity, talking about Blair, that he didn't think of that when all these new countries were admitted to the European Union on his watch. Oh, yes, Sir Michael. That's great, isn't it? Sir Michael, you're the reason I got into politics, because I'm sick of hypocrites like you. Your party voted for this. Your party championed this. You believed in enlarging the European Union, and when the deal on the table was open doors immediately, you three-line whipped your own MEPs to support it. But no, Sir Michael today pretending, of course, that he was Eurosceptic all along, and he always wanted to control immigration. Yes, I don't really trust any of them, I have to say. Femi is my next caller from Vienna. Femi, hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Is Blair right? Should we do a different deal with the EU on immigration and then have a second referendum?
His point, one of the points he was making today was that we can address immigration better while still remaining in the EU. And one of the issues with immigration is the fact that the government simply hasn't been, living up to its promises. It says it will control immigration, but it hasn't. And then you've got to ask why. What tools does it have at its disposal to control immigration? And you'd think that it's the EU that has this open border policy that's letting in everybody. But I'm reading right here Article 7 of the EU Citizens' Rights Directive, which says that in order to come here without a job, you need to have sufficient resources to not become a burden on the social assistance system of the host country, or have comprehensive medical insurance.
Yeah, it's theory and practice, isn't it? It's theory and practice.
Yeah, it's in theory and practice, but then you've got to ask yourself, if the government hasn't been implementing EU-made restrictions on immigration, then who should we be blaming? Should we be blaming the EU or should we be blaming the government?
Well, what about blaming Tony Blair? What about blaming the very person who today is suggesting things can be done differently? He's the guy that opened it all up, in every way, and not just, Femi, to the EU. He did it to the whole world as well, because he wanted to fundamentally change British society. Well, I suppose he succeeded with that. Femi, in theory, you're right. In theory, under European treaties, there are restrictions that can be placed, but the truth is hardly anybody does.
That's true, but then is the answer Brexit? Is the answer to leave the very institution that's putting in place the restrictions that we need, or is the answer to basically give more power to the government that hasn't been implementing restrictions? In fact, logically speaking, if the EU has restrictions on immigration and the UK hasn't been implementing them, leaving the EU would mean more immigration.
Do you know, Femi, when I was first elected to the European Parliament, all the way back in 1999, the one word that did not appear in any of my election material or a single speech or interview was the word immigration. Do you know why? It was a non-issue. Complete non-issue. Because the free movement of people between countries of comparative wealth, education and health standards meant we didn't see huge flights of people from one to the other. So I want to leave the European Union, even if immigration is not an issue, Femi, because I believe in our right to govern our own country, to elect people that make our laws and then have the ability to sack them. And I also, Femi, take the view very strongly that we should be free to open ourselves up and do deals with the rest of the world. So even if this issue was to be taken off the table, I would still 100% support Brexit.
Okay, but there's also the issue that if we accept that immigration is helping our economy because it's part of a single market package, then to say that we're still opposed to immigration, i.e. foreigners coming here, even though it benefits us, that sounds a little distasteful.
I think it's very questionable whether the immigration policy that's been put in place by the successive last few governments has benefited us. It's given us a higher GDP, but it hasn't given us a higher GDP per capita. But Femi, thank you. Femi making a very good point that, technically under the treaties, people who come and don't get a job should be removed. None of that has been done in Britain and pretty much nowhere else in my experience either. No thanks, Blair. I'm happy with the decision to leave, says Ken on Twitter. What on earth do you have to fear, Nigel, from a second referendum? It's either the will of the people or it isn't. Alex, I thought we decided that already, but there we are. Brexit needs to happen or there'll be uproar, says Tangoed on Twitter. And Tony's ship sailed on June the 23rd. It's called democracy, says Chris. Derek says Blair has little political power. He lost. And Sale says the only worry Remainers and the EU have is that the EU will succeed after Brexit. Well, that's a point, I think, that comes very strongly into the whole business of our renegotiation. And my last caller on this subject is Simon from Cambridge. Simon, is Blair right? Should we fiddle around with the rules and then have a second referendum?
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning.
No, I don't think Blair is right at all, actually. I think it's quite ironic that Blair pops over to Brussels, bumps into Junkers, and a couple of weeks later, comes up with some notion.
You see a link,
the
yeah?
EU can somehow change and negotiate something that Cameron failed to negotiate.
Yeah.
The reality is Blair's not right. Cameron was a poor negotiator, probably wasn't, who knows? It's irrelevant. The only thing that's changed now is we voted to leave, we've triggered Article 50, and the EU are now running scared because they realise that this is possibly the end of their great dream. And it's really, really simple. Blair is just a stooge for Junkers.
Simon, that's fine. Let's leave it at that. It's great. Thank you very much indeed. You've made your point. Well, one thing for certain, Blair himself was probably an even worse negotiator than David Cameron was. He gave away £7 billion of our rebate in return for Zippity. Well, from one Prime Minister to another. Theresa May is a hopeless leader of a weak government, and Britain will be better off with an administration like Tony Blair in the early years, a major Tory donor has said. Yes, Lord Harris of Peckham said the Prime Minister is no Thatcher and criticised her shell-shocked general election performance. So, should May stay? Call me on 0345 6060 973, text me at 84850, tweet me using the hashtag Farage at LBC, at LBC, watch us live on Facebook, Should May Stay.
On FM, online, on your mobile, and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock. Hurricane Irma is strengthening as it prepares to make landfall in Florida. It's now around 40 miles southeast of Key West as the U.S. state's governor tells residents to charge their phones while they have power. Millions of people have fled their properties after authorities ordered they evacuate. Kevin Smith from the Salvation Army says the scale is unprecedented.
6 million people leaving their homes to go somewhere else. And right now they're just trying to find a place that's safer than where they were. We've never seen these numbers. So that effort to get people to help support those shelters, to care for those people, it's monumental.
Tony Blair claims the only way to have a successful Brexit is to make Britain stay in the European Union as a low-tax, low-regulation country. The former Labour Prime Minister is also calling for tougher immigration rules, which he says means Britain would have more control over who comes into the UK. Tony Blair's former Director of Political Operations, John McTernan, has told Nigel why Mr Blair is making this intervention.
It's an attempt to derail Brexit, which is why I think it's an interesting and clever intervention. He's casting around for a way to reframe the question of EU membership. If you can find a way to say the European Union doesn't need to create the problems that you believe it creates, does that resolve the issues that you had, or what is it a bigger, more profound one?
A police report into a former Conservative Prime Minister will be looked at by the National Child Sex Abuse Inquiry. It follows a Wiltshire police investigation into Sir Edward Heath, who led his party between 1970 and 1974. He was identified as a suspect over historical offences in 2015, a decade after he died at the age of 89. The Defence Secretary says North Korea's missiles aren't capable of hitting London yet, but their range is getting longer. Michael Fallon's comments come days after the regime tested a hydrogen bomb that could supposedly travel on a missile. Theresa May is reportedly looking at plans to ease the burden of student debt to win back young voters. The Sunday Telegraph says the Prime Minister is considering changing the formula. Many graduates pay interest rates of more than 6%, which is more than double the rate of inflation. The names of the 22 people killed in the Manchester Arena terrorist bombing have been cheered at the venue where they were attacked. Around 14,000 people were at the arena last night as it reopened for the first time since May with a benefit concert. Jamie Murray has won his second major mixed doubles tennis title. Along with Martina Hingis, they followed up their Wimbledon triumphs by winning at the US Open overnight. LBC weather, sunshine in the east, cloudy and wet across the west. That rain spreading to all parts of the UK by the afternoon. Feeling chilly, a high of 19 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Philip Chryssikos.
I just switched to Vodafone for my home broadband. They're offering unlimited fibre for 18 months with no upfront costs and no line rental for only £25 a month. Switch right now and you can choose a gift worth up to £199. I picked this wicked Sonos speaker. I think the neighbours love it too. Switch before the 11th of September and you can get one as well. Search Vodafone Broadband. Vodafone. Power to you. 18-month agreement subject to credit check and availability. New customers only. Gifts valued at RRP. Online redemption required. Terms at vodafone.co.uk/broadband gift.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
I think the pretence that Theresa May is in a rock-solid position as leader of the Conservative Party and as our Prime Minister is something that everybody in the Tory Party has tried to make us think ever since the general election. I don't believe that particularly to be the case, and I think she may be in for a sort of autumn of whispering campaigns. At least that's what I thought. Maybe it's not going to be that whispery, because Lord Harris of Peckham, him of Carpet Right, and I think probably the biggest retailer of carpets we've ever had in this country, a man who has been a Conservative all his life, a man who had a deputy treasurer position in the Conservative Party, a man who was given hundreds of thousands of pounds, it may even run into seven figures, in terms of donations to the Tory Party, and a man who, interestingly, has a whole series of Harris Academy schools, both at primary level and at secondary level, a lot of them in London, and some of them, by the way, doing phenomenally well. So a very, very respected figure in the business community, and he really has launched one heck of a broadside against the Prime Minister. He said that she is a hopeless leader of a weak government. He even says, despite, sort of 50-plus years of supporting the Conservatives, that Britain would be better off with an administration like Blair's in the early years. He also says she wasn't very good when she was Home Secretary. And he goes on further to make comments that I know are resonating with some in the business community, that she doesn't appear to be very business-friendly either. That an awful lot of her speeches and talk, she's very interventionist. She kind of accepts the status quo that we have, with the big corporate companies having huge influence over the political process. Doesn't seem to understand how small and medium-sized entrepreneurs get cracking and get off the ground. Now, Mrs May herself was on Test Match Special the other day, which she rather likes. Maybe more of that in the course of the next hour, because I rather like that too. And she defended herself by saying she's not robotic. But I think that what Harris may have done here is he may have opened a little bit of a dam. I have a feeling that as we run up to the Tory Party conference, there is going to be a lot of speculation about whether she's the right person to be Prime Minister, and whether, as Lord Harris of Peckham suggests, she's mishandling Brexit. So I want to know from you, should Theresa May stay as our Prime Minister or not? Is it a case of it could all be over by Christmas? I don't know. I think she needs to, certainly, even before Harris had said this, my feeling was she needs to get a grip pretty damn quickly. She doesn't look in control. And I feel that when you've got a situation where the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Philip Hammond, and the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, have spent much of the summer directly arguing and contradicting each other, it doesn't look like, does it, anybody is really in control. Harris also said that she's no Thatcher. Well, that's perhaps not a very fair comment in one way, because why should she even pretend to be Thatcher? But in policy terms, what Harris said was that at least with Thatcher, whether you liked it or not, you knew where you stood. And with May, she chops and changes her mind. So it's a really damning interview. It appeared in yesterday's Times, and I think, my own view, unless she gets a grip, there'll be a lot more of that between now and the Tory Party conference in a few weeks' time. And Stefan is calling me from Northern Ireland. So where, of course, Stefan, the DUP have 10 MPs, without whom she wouldn't be governing at all, would she?
No, she wouldn't. I believe that she should not stay. I believe she's weakening the peace process in Northern Ireland.
Do you? Is that because of the Brexit negotiation, or how do you see that?
Yes, with Brexit, with the majority of Northern Ireland voting Remain, and her opinion on social issues compared to the Democratic Unionist Party, I believe it's weakening the peace process. And as a unionist myself, I fear that a united Ireland is becoming a more of a possibility for a lot of people in Northern Ireland, and I believe Theresa May is a large cause of that, along with the insides of the Democratic Unionist Party itself.
Yeah, I mean, look, as far as the Irish border and Brexit's concerned, Stefan, I think the one person causing problems there is actually, I mean, in my view, it's Mr. Barnier, because most people in the north and the south say, yeah, of course we want, a frictionless, if possible, border. It seems to be the EU that are putting up objections to that and don't want to have a custom-free, tariff-free deal. Why do you say that her view on social issues is posing a problem?
With the Democratic Unionist Party opposing abortion and gay marriage, and a lot of people in Northern Ireland is the most religious in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
And have very strong religious views on abortion and homosexual marriage. I believe that the difference in opinion can start to create a problem between the two parties and weaken her already weak government.
Okay. So, Stefan, if she was to go as leader, if Lord Harris has started off something that snowballs, and no one knows whether it will, but there is a possibility that it will, I presume, given what you've said about Northern Ireland and its different religious and social stances, I presume you'd like Jacob Rees-Mogg, I presume, as Prime Minister, given his views on these subjects.
I don't hold any religious views. I don't really have opinion. Well, I don't have opposition to social views.
No, I mean, but you weren't talking for yourself, Stefan. You were talking about Northern Ireland as a whole. I mean, would it be easier if Jacob Rees-Mogg was Prime Minister? Is really the question I'm asking you.
Yes, probably.
Probably. Well, I'm not sure that Jacob is going to become the next Prime Minister, although I think quite a lot of people are putting money on him. Stefan, thank you. And Stefan, concerned that may perhaps this relationship, if I can put it that way, that she has with the DUP, Stefan hinting it may actually not last. And, there we are. Well, before Lord Harris gave this interview, I was in Berlin on Friday, and I was there trying to push a message that actually having a tariff-free deal is more in Germany's interest than it is ours, because they sell us an awful lot of motor cars. But I was asked about Theresa May at that press conference on Friday. Here's what I said. She's not the warmest or most humorous person that has ever occupied number 10 Downing Street, and she was, of course, a Remainer. And she struggled when Jeremy Paxman asked her 4 times in one interview. He said, well, Prime Minister, having been a Remainer, are you now a convert to the Leave cause? And on 4 occasions, she sort of said, well, we'll do what the will of the people asked us to do, which I thought was a pretty unconvincing performance from a Prime Minister who was trying to win an election on the basis that Brexit meant Brexit. I would say this, being as objective, and I really mean this, as I can be, I would say this. Number one, she has to stamp her authority on the party and do so pretty damn quickly. Because we've had a period of time where on a weekly basis the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Foreign Secretary contradict each other on virtually every issue. So it looks rudderless. She must assert her authority on the party, and I think she has to assert her authority on the renegotiation process, where frankly we are now up against plain pig-headedness from virtually everybody in Brussels, who are being unwilling to bend and who seem, as I say, to put the interests of preserving their projects and lifestyle in Brussels above that of the interests of all the countries of Europe. And I would say to you, if she doesn't do those 2 things, doesn't get some sense of order back into her own party and direction back into where the renegotiations are going, then I think the whispering campaign will go from being something that is being done in private to being done in public, and she might not last till Christmas. Well, that's my view. I said it on Friday in Berlin. That was before Lord Harris came out. Should May stay, should May go, unless something really big changes, then it doesn't really matter what I think. Unless something really big changes, I think she will go. I think there are a lot more Lord Harrises lining up there. I could be wrong. John in Ravenscourt Park, what do you think? Should May stay as Prime Minister? Is she doing a good job in your view?
I think, all right, Nigel, yeah. All right, what I think overall, I think she should stay, because at the end of the day, I think the people that should go are the people that are trying to, cause disruption, and they're the people that voted Remain that I'm really surprised are actually still in the cabinet. People like, what's his name, the Chancellor. And
Philip Hammond, yeah.
Yeah, and the Home Secretary, Amber Rudd.
Yes.
I honestly think they should go. I think that she's not going to get very far if she's got people like that. And I think she should have people like Jacob Rees-Mogg. Because people like you and people like Jacob, people like Dave Davies, they respect a sovereign democracy, and that is what we voted.
Oh, John, it won't be me. It won't be me. She won't even speak to me. I mean, I'm not important enough or posh enough for her to even talk to, but that's not the point. The thing is, John, if you make these points about Hammond and Rudd, she was the one that picked them.
Yeah, that's what I just don't understand. I mean, also the thing is she was, if you replace her, someone might just... I mean, the powers that be, they're giving so much prominence to people like Blair, and they're trying to undermine people like Theresa May. She's not really the power that... She's not the powers that be. People have to understand where the real power is. It's like the EU, it's just a collection of lobbyists and vested interests, and... But I think she should stay.
You think she should stay? But
yeah.
you think she should stay, John, but you think she needs to make some big changes?
Yeah, definitely. I think she should get people like Jacob and people like Jacob Rees-Mogg in cabinet, yeah.
John, thank you very much indeed. Well, John thinks she should stay, but needs to make some changes, and I think unless she does make those changes, she's going to be forced out by her own side. And you have to say, she's not looking particularly happy in this job, is she? Right now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and it's 11:15.
LBC Through Your Workday with James O'Brien from 10, followed by Sheila Fogarty at 1 p.m.
Jacob Rees-Mogg said people are entitled to hold these views, meaning his views, but also the democratic majority is entitled to have the laws of the land as they are. News just in for all of you, that is a liberal view. And it's often people who like to regard themselves as the most liberal who are being illiberal towards this man.
Leading Britain's conversation, this is LBC.
When you're trying to find the perfect cruise for you, Virgin Holidays knows what's what. We know the length of the water slides, the temperature of the dry martinis, the second the sun hits the horizon, the decibel level of the fireworks, the size of every island we visit, the show times for the poolside movies, cooking time for the lobster, the salt they use for tequila, the name of each hop that makes the onboard craft beer, the height of the rock climbing wall. We even know the thread count of the bed linen. We know what makes a cruise. If you want to know more, visit your nearest Virgin Holidays store. Virgin Holidays. Seize the holiday. ATOL protected.
When most people think of 3D, they think of movies, games, or TV. At Darwood & Tanner, we think of it as a process of determining the shape and volume of your jawline in three-dimensional space, allowing us to create the perfect dental implant solution for you. To be amazed at the transformational effect of Darwood & Tanner dental implants, visit darwoodandtanner.co.uk. Darwood & Tanner. Obsessive about dental implant technology.
Another one drives a duster.
Another one drives a duster.
Another one drives a duster.
Hey, when do we get one too?
Another one drives a duster.
The Dacia Duster SUV starting from just $9,495 with over 100,000 UK customers and fantastic owner reviews on our website. Isn't it time you got in on the action? Dacia, you do the maths. But participating dealers only.
We now go live to Admiral HQ.
Admiral, you've promised customers lower prices for Admiral home and car insurance.
That's right. You can insure your home and cars on one policy and get guaranteed discounts.
And you promise flexible cover?
Yes. Start with a car or home and add others when it suits you.
Your home and car on one policy?
Exactly. We call it multi-cover insurance. You'll find it at admiral.com.
Looking for an amazing deal on paint? This weekend at B&Q, Dulux 2.5 litre standard coloured emulsion is down from £14 to an incredible £10. Hurry though, offer ends Monday. So, for great deals this weekend, come to B&Q. Offer starts Friday 8th of September. Excludes pure brilliant white.
It's Super Weekend at Lidl with up to 40% off selected products. Get a bottle of Bordeaux AOP Superior, only $2.99. 6 fun-sized bottles of fruit drink, just 69p. And 450 grams of grated cheddar, only $1.49. Lidl, big on quality, little on price. Subject to availability and I may vary selected stores while stocks last.
Want to beat the holiday blues? KLM is back with fantastic dream deals to colour your world. Fly from London via Amsterdam and swap grey skies for golden dunes in Abu Dhabi, turquoise waters in Mauritius, or colourful vibes in San Francisco. Leave the blues behind and book at KLM.com. KLM's dream deals end on Tuesday the 12th of September.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
Tory grandee, Lord Harris of Peckham, been in the party 50 years, held position, given them hundreds of thousands of pounds, helped them set up academy school. I mean, really a big beast in the Tory party, and he's really given the Prime Minister a serious kicking. He said she is a hopeless leader of a weak government. He even thinks the country will be better off with a sort of early Blair years type administration. Said she's not decisive, she's no Thatcher, doesn't understand business. I mean, it goes on and on and on, and I'm asking you, should May stay? And my own view, as I put last Friday when I was in Berlin, is that unless she acts very quickly to take control, events will overtake her and she'll be swept away. And I get from Caroline on Twitter with a symbol with a Lib Dem logo. Hi LBC, your presenter was guest speaker at a Nazi rally on Friday. Oh please Caroline, you know, what is it that if you go and stand with a candidate who has a conservative view, that somehow if you don't like it, you just label it, oh, she must be far right and extremist. And yes, you're right, her grandfather was a Nazi. Do you know what? It's very difficult in German politics or business or industry to find anybody who hasn't had a family link going back to either Hitler's time or Kaiser Bill's, and they weren't too nice in those years either. So honestly, some of this stuff, and this is, I think, in many ways, what political debate in this country, sadly, has sunk to. That rather than dealing with an issue, both sides hurl abuse at each other. And I genuinely am going to try, on this programme on Sunday mornings, to have civilised debate with people, whether I agree with them or disagree with them. The last time Alistair Campbell and I met, we were sitting on the couch of Good Morning Britain with Piers Morgan it was as a sort of ringmaster, and it was virtually a boxing match. But here I let Alistair make his point of view, and that's what I'm going to try and do. Michelle is calling me from Fulham. Michelle, is Theresa May going to survive as Prime Minister?
I really hope not.
You hope not?
I hope not.
Yeah.
I like her. Don't get me wrong. I like her. However, she has lost control. She has not done anything forward-moving for Brexit. And I do not think she is actually capable of doing it for us.
I mean, I'd agree, Michelle.
I haven't seen the capability.
It's very dithery, isn't it? I mean, you know, the fact that she became Tory Prime Minister and said, you know, Brexit means Brexit, and it then took her 9 months, if you remember, to trigger Article 50, I thought was really, you know, very, very indecisive. So what Michelle's really you're saying is she's not a bad person, she's just not capable, yeah?
I don't believe I've seen capability, no. We're in the 21st century. We cannot afford to have a Jacob Rees-Mogg, however you say his name. But there is somebody who is very talented, who has much European experience, who is pro-Brexit, who is capable and intelligent and able to do the job that is available for us to elect.
Certainly, Michelle, if Theresa May was to stumble and be pushed or to fall or to walk away or to claim ill health, Michelle, or whatever it was, and that wasn't a great line, there'd be a whole list of people. But Michelle's point's interesting because actually Lord Harris said very much the same thing when he was talked about her rise to the premiership. Harris said he didn't think she had it in her. So the deeper you go into this Lord Harris of Peckham interview, actually the more damning the whole thing becomes. When in Parliament, May is strong and secure. Outside, she's weak and wobbly, is what I get by text. May was the wrong Tory choice. Leadsom should have been leader. Charles in Birmingham, is May going to stay? Should she stay?
I believe we should leave May in power until March 2019, till the end of Brexit. Because if you get rid of her now, you create more instability. And if you put somebody else in charge, they might not be happy with the negotiations we're doing. So we've got to try and make her strong, and she needs to get herself strong with her party, and her party needs to get behind her instead of having a go. Because if the party do not have a go, keep having a go like this guy did, they're going to upset Brexit. They've got to understand this.
Charles, the one thing...
At the end of 19...
Yeah. Charles, the one thing that really upset Brexit and led to instability and worry was something earlier on this year called the general election. Because not only did that take a lot of time out of the Brexit process, given that Article 50 had already been triggered, but it leads to a situation where in tomorrow's vote, an important vote in Parliament tomorrow on the so-called Great Repeal Bill, but she can only win that vote now if the Democratic Unionist Party support her. And cynics would argue, Charles, that given that they've secured another £1 billion sterling for Northern Ireland, they probably will vote with her. And so I think she herself, actually, Charles, has caused some of this instability. And you say we need to make her strong, was the comment you made to me. But I don't think in a situation like this you can actually make someone strong. They've either got it or they haven't, surely.
I think if you had the backing of a whole cabinet, none of them upset her, none of them come out having a go, nobody at all, give her the backing of 100%, like a workforce does to a boss, she probably would be strong, and this is the problem.
All right.
People keep undermining her.
All right, Charles, I've just appointed you. You are now the new modern-day Alistair Campbell, let's say. You've got total power. You are in charge of number 10 Downing Street. What has she got to do to stop a never-ending stream, as the Tory party conference approaches, of people like Lord Harris of Peckham criticising her? What's the one thing you would tell her to do?
Go and see the 22 committee and get him removed. Because I don't know whether that's the way you have to do it or not, but that's what's got to be done. She has to tell him to pull in line or resign with immediate effect. People that need to be got rid of. And that's what she's got to start doing, and bringing people in.
Trouble is, Charles, if you sack grandees like Lord Harris, who don't need to stand for election, and who are owed nothing, who don't need a career in politics, because he's done phenomenally well in business, and he's very committed to education. If you sack someone like that, you might find half a dozen of his mates resign in sympathy with him.
Well, that's fine if they're no good. You've got to bring other people in.
Charles.
That's fine, but that's the way you've got to do it. If you've got a bad worker, you've got to get rid of them, don't you?
Charles, it's tyrannical stuff coming from Charles from Birmingham. Charles, listen, thank you very much indeed for playing along with that. In one way, Charles is right. In one way, he is right, that she has to get control. You cannot, it seems to me, if you're going through this vitally important process of Brexit, you cannot have the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Foreign Secretary openly contradicting each other week after week over the course of a summer. It just looks like she hasn't got that leadership ability. Now, maybe she can summon it up from somewhere inside herself, but if she doesn't, I'm sticking with my line. If she doesn't get a grip, number one of the Cabinet and give a united face, and number two, doesn't go to Brussels on October the 19th, which is the next big get-together of all 28 EU leaders, and actually say something really strong about Brexit. If those things aren't done, I don't think she can survive. Graham says May should leave, and so should we. Very good, Graham. Marty says government loved the fact that the left and right shout at each other instead of shouting at them. Well, that was my comment earlier about what's happening in politics now, where far less than debating things, we simply seem to be happy hurling abuse at each other, which is not much use. I wonder what Prakash in Camberwell thinks.
Hi.
Hello.
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. So is Is she a brilliant, strong leader in control and there for years to come?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
I don't think she can be redeemed either, and I know that's what you were asking the last caller.
Yes.
She can't be redeemed. I don't think she's got any future as a Prime Minister, and I'll tell you 2 reasons why. I think the first thing is, with respect to Brexit, she has completely mishandled the whole situation. I mean, she gave us this sort of this image that she was considering things very carefully 12 months ago and was developing a plan, and we all trusted her and all the rest of it. And what's now turned out is she had no plan, she's got no imagination, she's got no vision, she's got no strategic thinking, she's just working each day out, one day at a time. She's got no destination on Brexit, and because she's got no destination, she's not going to get there. She's going to make a complete mess of it. The second thing is the general election, right? She went into this general election with a half-baked manifesto. She then that's now been discredited. So you've got a government in power with a discredited manifesto. The poor old Queen had to give a Queen's speech. It was so embarrassing. I mean, poor woman. She put the Queen through this pain of a programme that had no substance to it, and now May is in power, but she's got nothing to say, and she's got no proposals to make. She is not taking this country anywhere.
Prakash, tell me something. Are you involved in politics in some way?
No, I'm not. No.
Well, you probably ought to be, because you put your points with great clarity, and your comments about the way she's handling Brexit and everything. I mean, do you say that as somebody who is naturally a Conservative supporter or not?
No, I'm a Labour supporter.
You're a Labour supporter, right?
I voted for Leave, but I voted for Leave for very different reasons from a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I think the reason I think they'd like to get rid of her, but they can't get rid of her, and I think there's a malaise deep at the heart of Tory philosophical thinking at the moment. They don't know what their plan B is. They don't know who to replace her with. All the front benchers have been discredited themselves one way or another. Then there's Jacob Rees-Mogg, which is a potential candidate, and I know you're promoting him.
No, I'm not promoting him. What I'm saying is that he's somebody that I shared platforms with and worked with during the referendum, and I believe him, Prakash, to be a very honest, honourable politician. One last comment.
What he's saying, and he's offering more clarity than the rest of them are able to offer. I accept that. I suspect that the Tories need time to think about their plan B. Somehow they need to resurrect their own. Their thinking is very stale.
Well, they've got a lot of thinking to do. Prakash, thank you. Strong criticism from Labour voting and Leave voting, Prakash there. He thinks May's got to go. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:30 and time for the news with Philip Chrysikos.
US President Donald Trump says, "Here comes Irma, God bless everyone." The Category 4 hurricane is now 30 miles away from Florida. It's expected to make landfall at 3 o'clock this afternoon, UK time. Tony Blair says tough new immigration rules would give Britain more control over who comes into the country and avoid the UK leaving the European Union. But the Defence Secretary, Sir Michael Fallon, says the former Labour Prime Minister should get over it and accept Brexit is happening. The number of people killed in Mexico's strongest earthquake for a century has risen to at least 90. The 8.1 magnitude quake struck off the coast of Chiapas last Thursday. LBC weather, sunshine in the east, cloudy and wet across the west. That rain spreading to all parts of the UK by the afternoon. Feeling chilly, a high of 19 degrees.
LBC travel in London. The A406 North Circular Road in Hendon is closed all day in both directions at the Staples Corner flyover because of works. There are long queues westbound from just after Henley's Corner and eastbound from the Neasden interchange. Also in London, the A4 Piccadilly underpass is closed in both directions at Hyde Park Corner because of maintenance works. The M4 eastbound towards London is moving slowly from Junction 3 for Hayes to the elevated section and Junction 2, that's Brentford. East of London in Harold Hill, there's a lane closed on the A12 Colchester Road westbound because of emergency repairs at Maylands Way. In Warwickshire, it's slow on the M6 northbound. There's a lane blocked between Junction 4 for the M42 and Junction 5 for Castle Bromwich because of an accident. On the rails, there's no service on Great Western Railway at Paddington because of engineering works that have overrun, and there's also no South Eastern service in or out of Cannon Street today. That's because of engineering works. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC.
Want to beat the holiday blues? KLM is back with fantastic dream deals to colour your world. Fly from London via Amsterdam and swap grey skies for golden dunes in Abu Dhabi, turquoise waters in Mauritius, or colourful vibes in San Francisco. Leave the blues behind and book at KLM.com. KLM's dream deals end on Tuesday the 12th of September.
Is your business structured in the correct way to manage your exposure to income tax, capital gains tax and inheritance tax? Does your business structure assist you in achieving your goals? Or do you feel like you suffer a tax charge every time you want to do something new? Let Barnes Rofe look at your business structure and see if we can help you with these issues. Visit barnesrofe.com. Barnes Rofe, clever accountants for business.
Buying a new car is so exciting, but at the same time, a bit daunting. Trudging around the dealers, haggling over price, always wondering if you're getting a good deal. But with CarWow, there's none of that. Just select the car you want, and CarWow brings you the best prices from their network of top dealers. All you have to do is choose which one to buy from. It's car buying with you in the driving seat. Search CarWow and try it today.
Do you feel as if you never get enough sleep? Hamsey's Sleep Centres have the answer. Buy a new mattress from our promotional range today and we'll give you up to £100 trade-in on your old one. And up to £200 off your new one, free local delivery, free mattress protector and a free pair of pillows. Plus a full 10-year guarantee. We'll even give you a 100-night sleep trial. Hamsey's, Beckenham, Bexley Heath, Leatherhead, New Malden and Wallington. And at hamseys.co.uk.
Ready to be floored by an incredible offer? Right now at B&Q we've slashed the prices of selected flooring, including laminate, real wood top layer, solid wood and luxury vinyl click. It's your chance to grab an amazing flooring bargain. So for great deals this weekend, come to B&Q. Some stores excluded. See DIY.com for details.
Sit back and dream of your perfect cruise. Does it have a sensational spa with sea views? Or fine dining for two? Dream no more. Sail away on our newest ship, TUI Explorer, and get drinks, dining and tips on us, plus £100 off per booking. Book with the specialists in your local Thomson store. Perfect. Thomson Cruises. Discover your smile. T's and C's apply. £100 offer must be selected at time of booking. New bookings only and valid on all ships sailing winter 17 and summer 18. Atoll protected.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
Carpet magnate and education boss Lord Harris of Peckham, lifelong Tory, has really put the knife into the Prime Minister, saying that she's a hopeless leader of a weak government. It's not pretty, and I'm saying should, may stay. My own view is that unless she makes some big changes and stamps her authority and gets a united cabinet and gets some real clarity in Brussels about where we're going, I think unless she does those things pretty quickly, there'll be a lot more Lord Harris of Peckhams that will come out of the woodwork between now and the Tory conference and perhaps beyond. I'm not sure she'll still be here at Christmas unless she gets a grip. Is it possible she can get a grip? Does she have that leadership ability within her? I don't know. I'm asking you that very question. Has May got what it takes? Can she? Come on, folks, tell me, can she reassert her authority? Let me know what you think. You can call 0345 6060 973. You can text at 84850. You can tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage and LBC. And for those watching us on Facebook Live, you can comment there too. Now, a story here. It's quite personal to me, really. When the referendum came, seemed to me that the simplest symbol of what we were arguing about was the British passport. So every time I did a big performance, I held up the passport. I did it in this very studio, actually, with Lord Heseltine, who looked pretty mortified when I did it. But my reason for holding up the passport was that the first two words on the British passport are, of course, European Union. I was saying, look, stop pretending that this club we're a part of, as you describe it, stop pretending that it's not a union that wants to be a state. Now, I emphasised the words European Union. I didn't really emphasise the fact that it was a burgundy colour and not as it had been in years gone by, the deep navy blue. But, you know, for people of a certain age, that too was something that they objected to. Now we're told that post-Brexit UK passports, that there are two foreign companies, one believed to be French and one German, that are competing for what is nearly a £500 million contract to redo our passports. I think it would be... Well, let's see. There is a British company bidding, and the thought that future British passports post-Brexit, without the words European Union, and possibly back to our traditional navy blue colour, would be made in Europe. Do you know what? I couldn't really care less. I'm not very worried about it, but I'd rather they were made in Britain, really. Otherwise, people will tease me for the rest of my life. Back to Mrs May. Has she got what it takes to be a leader? Should she stay? Should she go? Is Lord Harris of Peckham right when he says she is hopeless? I wonder what Albert in Leeds makes of all that. Albert?
Good morning, Nigel.
Good morning. Good morning, good morning. So what do you think?
Well, I think Mrs May needs to look and blame the Treaty of Versailles. We left the Germans with no option but to restructure and rearm. Right. And then, after the Third Reich, we left with no option but to create the Fourth Reich or the common market.
Is that is that really how you see the European project?
Yeah, pretty much. They're doing extremely well out of it. They quietly keep beavering away, exporting, and tend to keep a background stance and leave the French.
Well, Albert, whether you're right or not, and I suspect that at the time of the Treaty of Rome, I suspect the last thing on Germany's mind was taking the whole thing over, but effectively, where we are today, they are the biggest, strongest and most powerful country in the European Union. They have the most influence. They also pay the biggest bill. But either way, on the history of the European Union today, with a very strong German voice, we'd certainly agree on that. How does that help Mrs May? What is she to do in the face of all of this? And is she the right person to be our Prime Minister?
She's the right person to be our Prime Minister because there is really no alternative, and it doesn't matter because this is deja vu, isn't it? We always complain about our prime ministers, whoever they are, except for Harold Macmillan, of course, because I'm of that certain age.
But Albert, yeah. That's fine to say that we like to complain, and of course, the higher up you go in any organisation, the more likely you are to attract criticism. It's kind of how it works in the world. So the Prime Minister being at the top is going to get a lot of criticism. But the point about this, Albert, is that this is somebody who's been a lifelong Conservative, and he's supported the party through all sorts of different leaders, Thatchers and Majors and Michael Howards, and he's supported the party loyally all the way through, but now he's broken ranks. Does what Lord Harris of Peckham has said, does it show that she's not actually fit, in your opinion, to be a leader?
Well, a person I use all the time, my carpet layer, who Lord Harris may know, being in the same profession, he follows much the same view as Lord Harris.
Yeah.
Who really, she needs to air his views and the statements he's made in the past to really belittle this man. Like, this is what we need to do to lots of these statesmen as they see themselves.
Right, so she should... I mean, I had a previous caller suggesting this. So, Albert, she should basically boot Harris out of the party. Is that what you think?
No, leave him to go with his tail between his legs. Surely she can do that in another way.
Okay. No, Albert, fine. I mean, there's two callers now have said that in some way Lord Harris needs dealing with by Theresa May. I'm not sure that's actually going to work, folks, but there we are. Theresa May will prove to be an effective PM, and her moaning critics should behave themselves, says Richard. Hi, Nigel. Lord Harris has a new book launching soon. Might explain his intervention yesterday. Blatant free publicity, says Phil. Do you know what, Phil? I don't think Lord Harris needs free publicity. I don't think the prospect of making a few quid on a book, I don't think, given his business career, is particularly going to excite him. I honestly think the best chance we now have of Brexit actually happening and not being wrecked by the Remainers is to keep Theresa May. I get on Twitter, and there are certainly quite a few Conservative MPs who are Eurosceptics that do take that view. They think she has to stay. They worry that if she goes or is toppled, the Tory party would relaunch itself into a civil war, a rerun of the referendum, but going on within their own party, and that could lead to huge instability. And that's the only reason she's still there post the election, that is the fear. That is the fear in the House of Commons. I think people like Lord Harris are outside of that day to day, and they're looking at the big picture. You know, people like Harris who are in business don't want transitional arrangements, don't want to muck about. They want us to leave the EU as quickly as possible so we can get on with the rest of our lives. So you've got two very different kinds of Tory supporter here. One involved in the day-to-day machinations of Westminster and worried about internal civil war there, and the other, the more, step-back position of a senior businessman like Harris, saying, just for goodness sake, will you get on with it? We've got a caller from Australia, Ian. Now, we're going to be in Australia very soon, and England have just won a test series, so maybe we're favourites. Will we come to Brisbane for the first test? I don't know. Good morning.
Absolutely, mate. Brisbane, Australia. Yep, that'll be the first test.
It's normally the first test, and of course I
will be there. I will be there. I can assure you, supporting the Barmy Army.
I have been with the Barmy Army on tour before, and it is great fun.
Once or twice.
Now, what time of the day is it there, Ian?
It's 8:45 at night. So good evening.
Good evening, Australia. So
yes.
Should Theresa May stay? Or is Harris right? Do they need somebody better to lead the country through this crucial period?
I was listening to a good friend and colleague of yours the other day.
Yeah.
I think he goes by the name of James O'Brien.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, I tend to disagree with a lot of what he says, but the other day he asked a question and he said, what does Theresa May stand for?
Mm-hmm.
And I supported obviously leaving the European Union. I support the Conservatives. But I honestly couldn't tell you what she stands for. She's never explained her reasons for changing her mind on Brexit. She was a Remainer.
Yep.
She's never told us why she now supports leave. I honestly, it might sound a bit cynical, and you'll probably agree. I think she's just a typical career politician playing it safe.
Oh, God, you're so cynical, Ian, really.
Well, that's honestly what I think, and I think you probably agree as well.
I do. To some extent, Ian, I do. I don't think she believes in very much at all. I agree with you. And it's really interesting. During the election...
I don't know what she stands for. I do not know what she stands for.
During the campaign, Ian, in one of the interviews, Jeremy Paxman asked her 4 times, as a Remainer, do you now believe in Brexit? And not once did she say yes. She just said, we're carrying out the will of the people. So, Ian, is the answer, and you're a Conservative supporter and you're a Brexit supporter, do you think she'll still be there at Christmas?
Yeah.
You do?
I hope not. I hope not. I was actually a UKIP supporter, but in the general election, I would have voted for the Conservatives,
right?
Tactically, basically,
But you want a leader. You want a leader that believes in something, yeah?
Absolutely, absolutely. Get the mog in, I reckon.
Right. And when are you back in the UK? You're obviously working in Australia.
Actually, I am. Yeah, I've actually lived here for a few years now.
Right.
Actually, I wanted to call up an hour ago when you were talking about immigration, but that's a different topic now.
It is. It is.
I'm actually flying back next weekend.
Okay.
The first. There's a bit of a family reunion going on and
very
all
good.
That sort of stuff.
Very good. Well, Ian, thank you. It's not often we get calls from Australia. Thank you. I had lots of phone calls in my weekday night show from America and other parts of the world. I think that's the first one from Oz that I've had since I started working at LBC. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show exclusively here on LBC. It's 11:46.
Coming up at 10 on LBC, Majid Noir's.
Tony Blair's demanding tough new immigration rules, arguing there's no diversion from Brexit without addressing the grievances that gave rise to it. Do Remainers have to respect the referendum vote to change it?
Majid Noir's on LBC.
Your company's doing pretty well. Your tax position's okay. So what's keeping you awake at night?
To face the future with confidence, talk to Vision Consulting. We've expanded from Gants Hill to the Gherkin, with clients from the fishmonger to the multi-million-pound property investment company. And our growth as a firm of chartered accountants and registered auditors is based on our passion for our clients' business.
Have confidence in your accountant. See visionconsulting.co.uk.
Right, class, today's register. Ahmed?
Yes, miss.
Amy?
Yes, miss.
Kiara? Kiara? No? Catherine? Carlos? Frankie? Luca? Over 200 school children are lost to suicide every year in the UK. Search Papyrus Prevention of Young Suicide and help save the class of 2018. Join the conversation with hashtag Class of 2018.
Welcome aboard the 44 to Tooting Broadway via navigating the bustling streets of London, keeping the peace between two sleep-deprived buggy owners. Victoria Bus Station, giving directions to 3 lost tourists. Helping an elderly lady get on safely with her bags. Battersea Park, keeping an eye out for everyone else on the road. And helping a child who is feeling unwell.
Felicia does more than drive the bus because to her, the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Sometimes it can be hard to keep your show on the road, but new Car Genie from the AA makes things easier. Car Genie helps predict and prevent breakdowns. Just plug it into your car and it will warn you and us if there's a potential problem. That should keep you rolling. New Car Genie from the AA, because anything can happen. Compatible vehicles only. Check the AA.com for details.
Is your company thinking of moving office? If so, this could be the perfect opportunity to revolutionize your business, transform your workplace, and inspire your staff. Speak to Maris Interiors, who've been designing and fitting out workplaces for over 3 decades. Book your free consultation, attend a free seminar, or get your free guidebook. Go to officerelocation.co.uk. Maris. Workplace Design Experts.
Leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
We're discussing whether May should stay or go. But first, I've loved radio all my life, and I've been an LBC listener since the 1970s. But I've had to admit, to the bosses before I signed up here, that there was one other particular radio show that I've been a fan of. And since 1970, I've been listening regularly to Test Match Special. And so Henry Blofeld had been there for, I think, 1972 he joined. And it's a really interesting thing that when you follow a presenter, when you follow a radio show, and you follow it year after year, it actually becomes a part of your life. And I was listening live yesterday when Henry signed off after nearly half a century of doing Test Match Special, and I felt sad. I felt there was a bit of a gap. I know that Henry Blofeld will not be retiring. He's about to do a theatre tour round the United Kingdom, but I want to pay tribute to it. I mean, anyone that can be on a radio show for nearly 50 years, wow, it takes some doing, and I'm going to miss him. But back to Lord Harris of Peckham putting the boot into the Prime Minister, saying she's hopeless and she's leading a weak government. I mean, it doesn't get much stronger than that, does it, from somebody who's been a major donor and supporter of the party over the years. Is this the first break? Are others going to come out over the course of the next few weeks and months and say she needs to go? Or actually, is she going to show that she's got leadership qualities that until now have been somewhat hidden? I wonder what Cynthia in Guildford thinks. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Nice to speak to you. I listen to you from 7 till 8 in the evening, so it's nice to listen to you again on a Sunday morning.
Well, thank you very much, Cynthia.
Yeah, great. I've just been listening, obviously, to it now, and the one thing that nobody has actually said at the moment is if I know Theresa May is obviously undecisive, and I've been a Conservative supporter all my life, and I find that I feel that she's not very strong, and I think she dithers. However, if she was to go in the next sort of few months or whatever, what bothers me most of all is that obviously somebody would step in and take over, but then I have a feeling that the left or the Labour Party or the Remoaners could turn round and say, well, you haven't got a mandate for Brexit. You haven't, and I wonder then if they will keep, because they are getting so vicious and so strong, that they will keep demanding another election, and we could end up with Jeremy Corbyn, and that's the one fear that I have. That's why I feel that, although I'm not happy about it, I really feel that she's got to stay.
Well, Cynthia, the circumstances of her being replaced, I think, are the key to understanding why fewer people so far have said what Lord Harris of Peckham has said. Namely, if there was one candidate who could be made the leader by anointment, without there having to be a contest, do you know something, Cynthia? It would have happened, in my view, already. Because I think a lot of them feel, and some of them like May and some of them don't. You know, I've yet to meet anyone who's told me she's really a good leader. So what they fear, Cynthia, is there would not be, a coronation. There'd be a contest. It would reopen, and I'm sure that down in Guildford, you meet Conservatives who've got very UKIP tendencies.
Yes, that's true. Well,
and you probably get some Blairite ones as well. I mean, who think
UKIP? I must be honest.
But I mean, that's the truth of it, isn't it? That actually, within the Tory party, there are UKIPers, and there are and on Europe there are Blairites, and they've just about managed to keep this whole thing together through the referendum. So they fear that opening up. As for Labour attacking them, well, of course, Gordon Brown became Prime Minister, didn't he, without winning an election, but that wouldn't bother them. Yeah, they'd scream and shout, but if the Tory party was stable under a new leader and the deal with the DUP was fine, they'd be there. Cynthia, what you've pointed out, and thank you very much for calling, what Cynthia there has pointed out is the real dilemma, I think, that faces particularly Conservative MPs. They're really scared that there's nobody obvious to take over, nobody that could actually unite both wings of the party and be seen to be the right person to get on with Brexit. So it's a pretty difficult spot. Margaret says on Facebook, I wanted her to be PM, but she is so unsecure that, sorry, she must go. Irene says Britain was respected when Margaret Thatcher was PM, although I didn't agree with her or her policies, but history's proved her right. Greg says it doesn't really matter whether May stays or goes. It won't stop Labour winning the next election. And the passport comment, well, do you remember earlier I was saying that there are two foreign companies bidding to make the new British passports post-Brexit? It's a contract that's worth 490 million sterling. There's one British bidder too. And Gary has responded. I think Gary, with some passion, is saying our blooming passports should be made here. Everybody needs to buy Britain and buy British. Okay, Gary, I thought somebody would. Listen, I'd rather they were made here too, really. Of course I would, but it's not, I don't think, a great burning issue. Tim in Battersea, come on, tell me that she's a great Prime Minister and that she needs to stay.
Can't do it, Nigel. I'm afraid. I think she's not only a very poor Prime Minister, I think she's dangerous Prime Minister.
Do you?
I think that Brussels couldn't have a more ideal Prime Minister in England than they've got right now, and she's deeply insecure, as has been throughout her Home Secretary reign, and now she rules behind closed doors. She's afraid to actually be robust with her cabinet, and she radiates insecurity to the country and to the world, but especially to Brussels. And I think the sooner she goes, the better. Before Christmas.
It'll all be over by Christmas, Tim. Yeah, well,
I hope so.
Well,
I hope so.
I think it depends, doesn't it? It depends if there are more, Lord Harris of Peckhams waiting in the wings and prepared to say this.
Yeah, well, I agree, and I completely agree with him, and well done him, because he's one of our greatest businessmen, and now he's a great donor to to schools and things. And,
yeah, he's done a
He's
cracking job with those schools too, Tim, hasn't he? I mean, some of the results that the Harris Academies have been producing are quite extraordinary, so full credit to him on that.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
And, there's a proper leader. But I'm afraid Theresa May is not. And I think she's dangerous. I think that somebody must lead this country with some passion and with some, somebody you can trust. I mean, Thatcher was not for turning, but old May is not for trusting.
Okay. Well, Tim, that's your soundbite, and I thank you for your call and your thoughts. And Tim, not a fan at all. And, there we are. Thatcher not for turning, May not for trusting. It's pretty strong stuff. Nigel, sadly, Mrs. May has no judgment, hence her choice of advisers and the resulting general election disaster. Bring on Jacob Rees-Mogg from Liz in London. Well, there's a lot of people out there. Any debate we have, some of you seem to think Jacob Rees-Mogg is the answer. Whether he is or whether he isn't, I don't know. I want to say sorry to all those callers who couldn't get through. I've done my best with callers and texters and tweeters and everybody else. And I did say last week, one thing we would try to do with this show is to look ahead at what we think is coming up over the course of the next few weeks. And we discussed the German elections last week. And the reason specifically for picking up on Lord Harris of Peckham's comments is I'm going to predict this one is going to run and run. She's in real trouble unless she asserts her authority. Now, don't forget, you can listen to LBC whenever you want, wherever you are, by downloading the free LBC app on your mobile or tablet. It's the LBC Catch-Up app. You've been listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back tomorrow evening from 7. Coming up at 3, it's Stig Abel. But up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel. Coming up, a Christian family are threatening legal action after withdrawing their 6-year-old son from his Church of England primary school because a boy in his class was allowed to wear a dress. But why should the school be forced to submit to this family's religious sensibilities? Before that, many soldiers stricken with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, after leaving our armed forces say they feel abandoned by the army. They served Queen and country, but do we abandon and discard veterans after they retire? But first, Tony Blair today demands tough new immigration rules, arguing that there is no diversion possible from Brexit without addressing the grievances that gave rise to it. Paradoxically, do Remainers have to respect the referendum vote to change it?
On FM, online, on your mobile and on digital radio. Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 12 o'clock, US President Donald Trump says God bless everyone as Hurricane Irma pushes towards Florida. It's strengthened to a Category 4 hurricane ahead of making landfall at 3 o'clock this afternoon, UK time. Florida's governor has told residents to charge their phones while they have power and to make sure emergency alert settings are enabled. Holidaymaker Jay, who's from Swansea, has spoken to LBC from neighbouring Georgia.
People have boarded up their windows. Basically every gas station is out of petrol. There's hardly any water in the shops. There's no bread. There's been absolute chaos here.
Tony Blair says the UK can avoid leaving the European Union by having tough immigration controls. The former Labour Prime Minister, who's a supporter of the EU, has also suggested European migrants should have to register with town halls. But the Justice Minister, Dominic Raab, is dismissing Mr Blair's proposal.
Tony Blair was the guy that introduced the open door immigration that we're now trying to resolve because the public feel very concerned about it. We've also tried to get the kind of deal he talked about with the EU, and the EU has said no.
And Majid will be leading Britain's conversation on that story next. At least 90 people are now known to have died in Mexico's strongest earthquake for a century. In the state of Oaxaca alone, officials say 71 people died following last Thursday's tremor. It's claimed the Prime Minister is looking at plans to ease student debt to win back young voters. The Sunday Telegraph reports Theresa May is considering changing the way they're charged interest on the loans they take out. Reports say post-Brexit British passports could be manufactured in Europe. The Sunday Times says 2 foreign companies have been shortlisted for the contract. It's expected those passports will be the old-style navy blue ones as a symbol of the UK's regained independence from Brussels. So Mo Farah has won a 4th straight Great North Run. He surged past New Zealander Jake Robertson on the final stretch to claim victory in South Shields. Tennis has a new household name. Sloane Stephens has become US Open Women's Champion despite being unseeded and being ranked 957th in the world just a week ago. She overcame her previous foot injury to beat fellow American Madison Keys.
Once I kind of let that go and just realized that whatever's meant to be is going to be, that I worked hard to get here and that's that, then I think a lot of that stress was relieved and I was able to just play free and run and compete and just get out there and get after it every match.
LBC weather, sunshine in the east, cloudy and wet across the west. That rain spreading to all parts of the UK during this afternoon, feeling chilly, a high of 19 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Philip Chrysikos.
To some people, this could sound like a washing machine. But to a British Gas customer, it's the sound of a thank you. That's because we're thanking all of our customers with British Gas rewards, including things like free energy with loyalty days and many more. Join today. Offer subject to availability, conditions apply.
LBC Travel in London, the A406 North Circular Road in Hendon is closed until tomorrow morning in both directions at the Staples Corner flyover. It's because of works, so there are long queues going westbound from Henley's Corner and eastbound from the Neasden interchange. In Enfield, there are queues on the A10 Great Cambridge Road going southbound. There's a lane blocked at Weir Hall Avenue because of an accident. The Hackney Carnival is getting underway, so there are roads closed for the afternoon, including Mare Street and Queensbridge Road. In Ealing, the traffic lights aren't working on Witton Avenue East at Greenford Road. In Warwickshire, there are queues on the M6 northbound. There's a lane blocked between junction 4A for the M42 and junction 5 for Castle Bromwich because of an accident involving two cars. And on the tube, there's no service on the Victoria line between Brixton and Warren Street because of a person on the track. It means there are severe delays on the rest of the line. LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation with Majid Nawaz.
Good afternoon, it's Majid Nawaz here on LBC, leading Britain's conversation for the regular weekend show. Once again, back with you on Sunday. Stay with us because we are coming to the subject of soldiers suffering from PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. They served Queen and country, but do we abandon and discard veterans after they retire? I want to hear especially from you if you are serving or former soldiers with our armed forces and indeed veterans. And that's all coming up. But right now, we're on the subject of the hour, and that is Tony Blair. He has dropped another political bombshell, dictating the headlines once again. Most of today's news will be leading with this story, and that is Tony Blair demanding tough new immigration rules as a way, paradoxically, to circumvent Brexit. That's Tony Blair's suggestion. He's argued that there is no diversion possible from Brexit without addressing the grievances that gave rise to it. So I'm asking, do Remainers, I'm asking something, I'm paraphrasing Tony Blair's assertion and turning it instead into a question. I didn't come up with this line, but I do think it's quite a good line. And he has said, paradoxically, do Remainers have to respect the referendum vote to change it? Tell me what you think. 0345 60 60 973. That's the number to call to tell us whether you think Remainers have to respect the referendum vote to change it. 0345 60 60 973. It promises to be an interesting conversation. Let me just tell you a bit about what I think. So, this is the man, Tony Blair, the Prime Minister, who was largely by Brexiteers blamed for much of the situation with the plight at the state of our immigration in the United Kingdom because of his presiding over the expansion of the EU and the unprecedented migration flows to this country from Eastern Europe that were, admittedly by him and others, not predicted. So people are blaming him, and they are quite bitter that now what they perceive as a U-turn has been embarked upon by our very popular once former Prime